Emma disappeared in the middle of the night, right from a neighbor's party. Her search reached a dead end until a small note written in her hand was found several kilometers from home. These 2 words, written in hurried handwriting, became the first and main evidence that Emma was still somewhere nearby. Emma disappeared at night, right from a pajama party at the neighbor's house. This house stood on a quiet, ordinary street in a Brisbane suburb, just 2 lots away from the house where she lived with her family. This was a neighborhood where people were accustomed to trusting each other, where no one was afraid to let children out to play in the yard in the evening, and where house doors were rarely locked at night. It was here, on a small, quiet street, that what would later be called the most frightening disappearance in the entire history of the neighborhood occurred. In the morning, the mother of the friend at whose house Emma was staying overnight entered the bedroom to check if the children had woken up. But the bed where Emma was supposed to sleep was empty. The sheets were rumpled, as if she had just been sleeping there, but the bedroom window was wide open, the curtain gently swaying from the morning wind. The woman immediately felt that something was wrong. Although at first she still hoped that Emma had simply decided to return home and left early in the morning. But when Emma's parents reported that the girl had not returned home, it became clear that something bad had happened. Investigators quickly arrived at the scene. The first thing that caught their attention was the traces of dirt on the windowsill of the open window. The traces were distinct and clearly belonged to an adult person. This meant that someone had entered the house at night and calmly taken Emma right from her bed while everyone else slept peacefully nearby. The police thoroughly examined the yard, the adjacent territory, and questioned the neighbors. The parents of the friend at whose house Emma was staying looked confused and depressed. They assured that they had heard and seen nothing during the night. Only the girl's mother remembered that around 3 o'clock in the morning she woke up from some incomprehensible feeling of anxiety, but finding nothing unusual, went back to sleep. No one in the house could remember any strange sounds, footsteps, or voices. Nevertheless, information came from one of the neighbors that same day. A man was returning home late and claimed that around midnight he noticed an unfamiliar person walking down the street. The stranger walked calmly, as if he was not at all afraid of being noticed. However, the neighbor could not give a detailed description of this person. He only remembered dark clothing and an unusual gait, but could not make out the face as it was too dark on the street. Investigators immediately began considering several versions of what happened. 2 figures were prioritized. The first was the father of Emma's friend. In his accounts of what happened on the night of the disappearance, the police discovered a number of contradictions and strange uncertainty. He was confused when it came to his own nocturnal movements around the house, could not say exactly what time he went to bed, and assured that he had seen and heard nothing unusual. His tense and nervous behavior did not escape the investigators' attention. Suspicion was further strengthened by the fact that he had no alibi. No one could confidently confirm that the man was actually in the house all night. The second object of suspicion was the stranger seen by the neighbor. The police suggested that this could be someone from outside who deliberately came to this area, knowing that it would be easy to break into one of the houses. But the identity of this stranger remained a mystery. No cameras or witnesses who could clarify his features were found. Nevertheless, the police began working in both directions simultaneously. Investigators studied Emma's friend's father particularly closely. A search was conducted at his place. He was interrogated several times in a row, trying to find at least some leads to connect him with the disappearance. However, he admitted nothing, insisting that he himself understood nothing and was just as frightened as everyone else. At the same time, his answers seemed suspicious and confused to the investigators. Soon, local residents learned about the police suspicions and rumors spread around the neighborhood, causing tension around this case to grow with each hour. At some point, it seemed that the police were ready to charge the man. However, his involvement was not yet confirmed by any serious evidence. But then the investigation sharply changed direction. On the second day, about 3 kilometers from the house where Emma disappeared, one of the local residents found a strange note. A small piece of paper clearly torn from a school notebook was written in childish, uneven handwriting. On it were only 3 words. When the note was delivered to the police, investigators immediately understood the importance of the find. Handwriting examination confirmed that the words were written by Emma's own hand. This short phrase became the first irrefutable proof that Emma was still alive and probably located somewhere nearby. This changed everything. The police understood. Their initial suspicions were directed at the wrong person. The trail meant something completely different. Someone, hidden and still unknown, was keeping Emma somewhere nearby and possibly wanted the police to find her themselves. This note turned the investigation upside down, and now the search began from a completely different side. After the vagrant version completely collapsed, investigators found themselves back at the starting point. The investigation reached a dead end, and it seemed there were no more leads left. It was at this moment, while double-checking old testimonies, that the police noticed one small but important detail. The parents of the party hostess where Emma was on the night of the disappearance turned out to be not completely frank. In particular, the girl's father clearly concealed one important fact. During a repeated and more rigorous interrogation, it turned out that on that night he was absent from home for about 2 hours. This circumstance the man deliberately did not report to the police during the first conversation. And now he had to explain why. Under pressure from investigators, the party hostess's father finally admitted the fact of his absence. He reported that he indeed left the house, but was not where he could be suspected. It turned out that around midnight he went to a neighboring area about 15 minutes away by car to meet with his ex-wife. The man explained that he had not communicated with her for a long time. Relations were extremely strained, and he did not want to disclose the very fact of the meeting, since this could cause unnecessary questions and tension in his current family. Nevertheless, he insisted that this event had nothing to do with Emma's disappearance and was simply a personal meeting, the circumstances of which he did not intend to discuss in more detail. Investigators did not like this incomplete frankness, but for now they could not openly accuse him of anything more than concealing circumstances. It was necessary to verify the man's words before moving further. The police immediately summoned the man's ex-wife for interrogation. The woman agreed to confirm the fact of the meeting. However, her testimony sounded uncertain, confused, and sometimes contradictory. She could not clearly state the time when her ex-husband arrived, was confused about small details of the conversation, and could not even immediately explain the reasons for their sudden night meeting after so many years of silence. She would claim that she simply wanted to discuss some old family matters, then abruptly avoid answering, saying that she did not want to disclose personal information. Such behavior naturally raised even more questions among investigators and strengthened suspicions that something was wrong with this story. The investigation began asking more specific questions. Where exactly did the meeting take place? Who saw them together? Why did the former spouses choose such a late and inconvenient time for conversation? With each new answer, the woman seemed less and less convincing, and investigators began seriously considering the version that she was simply covering for her ex-husband. Against the backdrop of these contradictory testimonies, the police were again forced to turn their attention to the party hostess's father. His absence from home at the moment of Emma's disappearance could not be a simple coincidence. The investigation tried to reconstruct his exact movements using mobile data. They requested information from cell towers to verify each of his statements. This technical verification gave an unexpected result. According to mobile operator data, the man's phone was indeed detected in the indicated area from approximately midnight to 2 in the morning. He did not approach the zone where the note and shoe traces were found, nor the wooded area where the abandoned structure was discovered. His statements, despite all doubts and inconsistent testimony from his former spouse, received an ironclad alibi. This fact forced the police to regretfully acknowledge that they had again directed forces and resources along a false trail, and were once again at the starting position, not having come one step closer to solving Emma's disappearance. It was precisely at that moment, when the investigation was again beginning to reach a dead end, that a completely unexpected signal came. Residents of Brisbane's outskirts contacted the police, reporting that near the local park and school, a man had appeared again who had previously been repeatedly noticed in suspicious behavior. He was known to police for a whole series of minor offenses, among which were incidents involving surveillance of minors. Witnesses claimed that he behaved very strangely, clearly avoided people's gazes and tried to stay away from public attention. Police immediately responded to this signal. Emma's case again sharply changed direction. The investigation, seemingly frozen in place, once again rapidly came to life, and investigators felt they were approaching something important. Perhaps this very person was the key they had been lacking. Now their task was to get on his trail as quickly as possible and find out whether he was involved in Emma's disappearance. The signal about the suspicious man spotted on the city's outskirts became a new stage in the investigation. Police did not waste time and immediately established surveillance of this person, carefully studying his past and possible connections to the area where Emma lived. Soon it became clear that this man was a 34-year-old resident of a neighboring district named Thomas, who had already several times found himself under police scrutiny. The reason for this was his ambiguous behavioral episodes and confirmed mental health problems. Police carefully retrieved archival materials and discovered that about 5 years ago, Thomas had undergone examination at a local psychiatric clinic after complaints from city residents. He had repeatedly been noticed near local schools and parks, observing the small visitors playing there. At that time, no direct accusations were brought against him, and everything was limited only to recommendations for monitoring his mental state and behavior. However, now considering Emma's disappearance, this fact had a completely different meaning. Police immediately began carefully questioning Thomas's neighbors, trying to compile a complete picture of his behavior and habits. Practically all neighbors spoke of him the same way: a withdrawn, strange, and extremely antisocial person. He rarely left his apartment during daytime, preferring to move around in the late evening or at night. According to neighbors' testimony, Thomas avoided any conversations, did not even greet people, and never struck up acquaintances. One of the neighbors recalled that approximately a week before Emma disappeared, he had seen him several times in the immediate vicinity of the area where the missing person's family lived. At that time, the man simply stood on the street and looked into the distance as if observing something, but no one attached significance to this. Investigators decided to immediately detain Thomas for official questioning. When police officers appeared at his apartment door, the man offered no resistance, although he looked highly agitated and nervous. He immediately began claiming that he was not involved in any crimes, and assured investigators that he had not even been nearby on the night Emma disappeared. However, police already had evidence to the contrary. A surveillance camera installed at a local gas station clearly recorded Thomas's car passing in the immediate vicinity of the street where the house with the party was located, precisely on the night Emma disappeared. The recording time coincided with the presumed period of disappearance. Police officers presented this fact to Thomas, and he hesitated, clearly not expecting such a development. The man quickly found an explanation. He allegedly was heading to a friend in another district, and his route accidentally passed by that street. But his words sounded unconvincing, insincere, and even desperate. Police immediately checked this version, but it turned out that the friend Thomas named was absent from home that evening and could neither confirm nor refute his words. The investigation still had no direct evidence of Thomas's guilt, only indirect indications of possible involvement. This created the feeling that the truth was very close, but still unreachable. Despite all the obvious suspiciousness of Thomas's behavior and his extremely unsuccessful explanations, direct evidence linking him to Emma's disappearance was not found. Police officers carefully examined his car and apartment, but found no traces of outsiders having been there or signs that Emma had been with him. Thomas continued to claim that he had no relation to what happened, and police were almost ready to acknowledge that they had made another mistake. Disagreements began within the investigative team. Some officers considered Thomas the only correct suspect. Others thought this was another dead-end path distracting from the real criminal. Tension among police officers was mounting, and the investigation gradually began to lose its momentum again. However, it was precisely then, when police were practically ready to retreat again, that the situation sharply changed. Forensic experts who had earlier studied evidence from the place where Emma's traces were discovered in the forest provided an unexpected report. Their conclusion unambiguously testified to a match of fingerprints found on cigarette butts near the old abandoned hut with Thomas's own fingerprints. This information instantly turned the entire investigation upside down. Now the investigation had absolutely clear, scientifically confirmed evidence that Thomas had been near the place where Emma was hiding after her disappearance. All facts began to fall into a single, convincing picture. After long days of uncertainty and false trails, police received a real lead confirmed by irrefutable evidence. Now police knew exactly that Thomas was not only hiding something, but had clearly been where Emma was located. The investigation was ready to take the next decisive step. The fingerprint match with those found at the evidence site finally convinced police that Thomas was Emma's real kidnapper. All circumstantial evidence that previously seemed doubtful and unconvincing now gained absolute clarity. Under the weight of irrefutable proof, Thomas lost all resistance and began giving full testimony. His account struck investigators with its frankness and cold composure. In the official interrogation, Thomas confessed that he had long observed the area, seeking a convenient opportunity to commit a crime. He chose the quiet Brisbane suburb precisely because local residents rarely closed windows and doors, and almost no one paid attention to random passers-by at night. The moment of kidnapping itself was not planned in advance. The bedroom window turned out to be opened completely by chance, and he perceived this as a convenient opportunity which he decided upon instantly and almost without thought. Thomas also told that he did not plan to cause physical harm to Emma and pursued no special goals other than taking her away with him. During the interrogation, he described in detail the place where he had hidden Emma after the kidnapping. It was a small hut, lost deep in the wooded area behind the city, the very one near which the police had previously found traces and cigarette butts. The investigators immediately sent an operational group to the location indicated by Thomas. When the police arrived at the scene, the hut looked abandoned, but that was exactly where Emma was. She was alive, physically unharmed, but was in the strongest emotional shock. She remained silent and barely reacted to the police officers' questions, obviously being in a severe psychological state. Nevertheless, the fact that Emma was alive and was now under protection instilled hope and relief in the hearts of her family and investigators. Subsequent interrogations of Thomas allowed the police to establish the complete picture of the crime. Thomas confirmed that for several weeks he had inconspicuously and regularly visited the area where Emma lived, observing the houses and daily life of their inhabitants. His target initially was not someone specific. He was simply looking for a suitable object and opportunity to carry out what he had planned. The decision to break into the house on that particular night was spontaneous and thoughtless. The open window turned out to be the very factor that prompted him to act. Thomas informed the police that he led Emma away through the window, while none of the residents heard or noticed anything. After that, he led her through the backyard and walked toward his car, left on a quiet neighboring street. Then he drove her to the hut in the forest, where he kept her until the moment of discovery. Thomas could not clearly explain the reason for his actions, saying only that he was driven by internal impulses and a severe emotional state, intensified by mental problems. When Thomas realized that the police had uncovered the entire chain of events and had serious evidence against him, he made a desperate attempt to escape from justice. During transportation to the site of the investigative experiment, he suddenly rushed to run, hoping to take advantage of the momentary confusion of the guards. However, the attempt proved to be absolutely useless. The police quickly and professionally detained him, placing him again under strict control and completely eliminating the possibility of escape in the future. After this incident, Thomas finally lost all hope of salvation and completely resigned himself to his fate, no longer offering any resistance or attempts to dispute his involvement in the crime. The trial of Thomas proved to be quick and unconditional. Considering the seriousness of his actions and the evidence provided, the judge issued the most severe sentence. Thomas was sentenced to lengthy imprisonment with mandatory psychological correction, which, however, could no longer cancel the gravity of his deed. Emma, having survived the deepest emotional stress and shock, returned home, where her relatives and loved ones were waiting for her. Emma's family received comprehensive psychological support to help her return to normal life after such a severe ordeal. Despite the successful completion of the investigation and arrest of the criminal, the Brisbane suburb, previously quiet and safe, could never return to the former atmosphere of absolute trust and tranquility. People became much more cautious, closed doors and windows, carefully watched strangers. What happened to Emma forever changed the residents' attitude toward their own safety and neighbors. This story became a bitter lesson for many, showing that even in the most peaceful and reliable places, an unpredictable and terrible crime can occur, and attentiveness and caution are never excessive.